Okay, we're going to call the public hearing to order at 6:01 p.m. This is a public hearing to withdraw. I have to go over each thing, or just to go around.
It's up to you.
A hearing to the board's proposal to withdraw from the Facilities Expendable Trust, BES air handler for $15,000, BES cafeteria tables for $24,000, Bryant Field paving for $45,000, and BHS gym roof for $32,000 for a total of $116,000. So I'll open it up for questions.
This is item 5 or
No, this is the public hearing. We have to hold a public hearing in order to withdraw from expendable trusts.
okay. Sorry.
So right now we're holding the hearing, then when the hearing is done. But yes, it is on our agenda for later to take action. Anyone have comments, questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 6:02. And then we'll open up the board meeting at 6:02. All board members are present. First up is review and approval of the April 9th public meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the April 9th public meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Okay, date and location of the next meeting is May 28th here at Belmont Elementary School. And we do not have a student club presentation tonight. So, that. Next up is public communication and correspondence. If you would like to address the board, you can come up to the microphone and I need your full name. Retta's going to want you to spell your name and what town you're from. Please limit comments to 3 minutes for each person. We have 30 minutes set aside for this. If it goes over, we will move on and we will move on to the next agenda item, and there's a second public comment at the end of the agenda as well. And we are able to take written comments, but they cannot be anonymous written comments. So if you have written comments, you can submit them to Greta. So I'll open it up for public comment.
Hello, Lisa Ober, O-B-E-R, from Belmont. I'm here to remind you what you got today or sometime today about a petition to go back to the 100 point grading scale. A lot of us in the community, teachers, parents, are against the 4-point grading scale, and you've talked about it for a year. So basically, public record, go back to the 100-point scale, please, so our children have a better time at school and in the future to go to college. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, my name is Sharon Chanley, C-I-A-M-B-I. I reside in town Belmont. I got this in my email on Saturday and I thought I would bring it down and show it to you just so maybe it would have a little bit of more impact if you see it. This is a progress report for my 10-year-old 5th grader at Belmont Middle School. He is a special education student and does have a lot of services through the school. This is page 1. Page 2, page 3, page 4, and what you're going to see yellow, highlighted in yellow, are the comments made by staff specifically from this child. So I have a before 4-page document that couldn't even bother to be printed, sent to me by email that I don't always check. And it doesn't really address or tell me anything about this child's academic needs. And I did talk to a staff member today upon picking them up. I had a small conversation with his para, and she said that she's not really allowed to communicate to me one-on-one about certain things. So I'm really kind of in the dark about how he's doing. So I just wanted, and I blacked out his name if anybody actually wants to look at it, but yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Kate McDonald. I'm a senior at Belmont High School and I live in Canterbury. Everything I'm about to say is my own personal opinion, so this is not from my perspective as a school representative. However, these opinions have not been formed in a vacuum, and they are influenced by all of the voices around me. One thing I would urge the board to not forget is the voices of students who struggle in school. The student voices you often hear are of those who are always looking for the next opportunity to advance their learning. And when considering the IKA, it's really important to understand how that will affect all students. The first thing I wanted to talk about was lines 31 and 32 on the IKA, which state any assignment or assessment that does not give a student the opportunity to achieve a 4 shall not be factored in when calculating the overall standard score, content area, or course grade. So I have a couple of issues with that. First is a point that I've reiterated a couple of times, which is that students believe that all of our assignments should be graded out of a 4. And I understand the reason for utilizing the 2 out of 2 in competency-based education, but it's simply not practical or necessary at the high school. As a student who will be graduating in like just a couple of weeks, I have 38 credits, which is 12 more than the regular diploma and 6 more than the diploma of distinction requirement. And I have never experienced an assignment that either was graded out of a 2 of 2 that I agreed with, or something like that. A lot of the examples that we commonly hear either don't exist at the high school or they just simply aren't used in that way. For example, the only vocab test that I've ever had was in my 11th grade English class, and that was not graded out of a 2 out of 2, it was out of a 4 because there was a spot on it for us to use the words in our own sentences, and that sort of extended the learning. So I think a lot of our assignments on the high school level fall into that. So even maybe at the elementary and middle school level, they might be better represented that way. At the high school, it just doesn't simply exist. And the few assignments that we do have that are out of 2 of 2, I would argue could be out of a 4. However, I know that not everyone agrees with that, and that's okay. But regardless, with that statement that I read earlier, that leaves you with 2 options: consistency or inconsistency. The first option is to leave it up to the teachers, and so I know teacher autonomy is super important in teaching, but in this case, that will result in the same situation that we have now, which is some teachers will use the 2 out of 2, some won't, and students and parents will be left confused and unable to obtain a solid understanding of the grades they're looking at. The second option is to mandate consistency. This means that students would have many more assignments than we currently do, where the maximum achievable score is below a 4, therefore reducing the number of opportunities students have to show their knowledge on a standard score, directly contradicting one of Mr. Tracy's goals, which is to provide students more opportunities to get those scores. What the IKA deems a 2 is important because for many teachers, even a simpler version of something can help demonstrate a student's knowledge and help establish standard scores. Standard scores are not an average of assignments. Rather, the teacher makes a claim based on the evidence the student has presented. Removing all assignments graded out of less than a 4 from this process means that students will have less evidence to show their understanding. For students struggling to reach passing, this has a much greater impact. For students who struggle with tests or summative assignments, these more basic assignments are an important way to show their teacher that they have some level of understanding. Removing those from being applicable to standard scores means that they will have very little evidence to show for all their hard work. The other section of the IK I wanted to point out is the scale comparing 1 through 4 grades with letter grades. First, I would suggest percentages or 1 through 100 rather than letter grades. That would be more helpful to students. But secondly, it highlights an important discrepancy, which is that a 4 does not equal an A. It is unfair for students for this reference to be provided with our current definition of a 4. Parents will ask, if a 4 is an A, why do you not have 4s? You got all the questions right, or you did exactly what your teacher asked, which is what students view as a 4, a highly successful demonstration of the knowledge being assessed. It is not doing an extra assignment, and it is not going beyond what the teacher has asked. I hope that you will take this feedback into consideration when evaluating the IK and our grading system. I have learned a lot from this experience, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to provide student feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Polly Camary, C-A-M-I-R-E, and I live in Canterbury. I also happen to be the high school council coordinator at Belmont High School right now. In my personal opinion, whatever system we use needs to be understandable by parents, it needs to be understandable by teachers, it needs to be understandable by students and by educators. I think that several years ago when we made this switch to competency-based education and to the 4.0 system, I think it was a really difficult concept to move from this 100-point scale to a 4.0 scale. And I think that in the time that has happened, we've also dealt with COVID, and that there have been, some other priorities happening all around the country and the world in terms of schooling and that sort of thing. The most important thing for me is that students are learning and that they are getting the education that they need. The teaching and learning that happens is the most important thing. How that is graded and assessed, yes, needs to be consistent. Yes, it needs to make sense to everyone. Parents and caregivers need to understand the system that is being used. I don't necessarily think that means going back to the 100-point scale. I think that there have been some adjustments proposed to our current 4.0 scale that make a lot of sense to a lot of people. In looking at the amount of, I don't know what the right word is, the amount of troubles or issues there were in changing to a 4.0 system, I think trying to go back to a 100-point scale is going to be equally, if not more difficult in a transitory type of way. So my recommendation to the board is to keep the 4.0 scale, but look at the adjustments and things that have been proposed. And I think that would present more satisfaction to everybody all around.
Anyone else? See none. Move to reports. First up, EMS.
Currently in 5th grade in ELA, they're reading a book and will write a 5-paragraph essay once the novel is completed. In 6th grade in ELA, they're learning about figurative language and writing narratives, including them. In social studies, they had a survivalist come to class one day, and they're learning about ancient Mesopotamia. And in math, they're learning percents and just finished dividing fractions.
In 7th grade, social studies, they have just finished their unit on the Constitution and are moving on to a launching a new republic and political parties unit. In math, they are working on ratios, proportions, and percents in their warm-ups. They also are reviewing area, perimeter order while using decimals and fractions. For 8th grade in social studies, there was a test on the South's reconstruction after the Civil War and are working on a unit about immigration. In ELA, they are reading The Life of Pi. Upon completion, students will be writing a narrative. In science, they finished the Earth and Space unit with planetary atmospheres. They are now working on a biology unit along with environmental science, sustainability, and natural processes.
For the entire school, math and reading state testing is taking place this week and last week. Teacher Appreciation Week was also last week. Student Council went around with a coffee cart once or twice a day for that entire week. And the Bulldog Spark May issue just came out.
Any questions for our representatives from EMS?
I don't have any questions, but I want to thank you for taking the time to provide us this report. And it is good information here. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you. Kate, EHS.
Hi. So this is my last board report, and I wanted to thank you all for this opportunity, giving me the chance to be a part of this board. I have learned a lot from this experience, and I hope that I was able to shed some light on student opinions. For this board report, I wanted to highlight some of the amazing things that BHS students have engaged with this year. First are the wonderful musical performances our students have put on this year. Both the chorus and the band have put on numerous concerts, cabarets, and attended festivals. 3 students were accepted into the New Hampshire Music Educator Association All-State Music Festival. One of the most exciting events that gets put on each year is the Monster Concert, where band students from all across the district collaborate and play together. This year, students from CES, VES, and BMS were buddied up with a high schooler for the day, giving them the chance to work one-on-one and learn some new notes. The Astronomy Club has been very busy this year. They have hosted speakers, held viewing events, and of course, eaten a lot of pizza. The total solar eclipse was certainly the biggest event, and the club hosted a viewing event at the high school. On Wednesday, May 1st, a time capsule full of memories and messages from the BHS community was buried at the Kristen McAuliffe Discovery Center. It will be opened on May 1st in 2079, which is New Hampshire's next total solar eclipse. The BHS Robotics program has had another very successful year. For the first time ever, a Belmont team won an award at Worlds, which is held in Texas. The entire team won a number of awards this year, including the Build Award, which is awarded to one of the best thought out and successful robots. Many of the seniors graduating from the program will be pursuing an engineering-related field in college. Our student athletes continue to impress on and off the field. BHS had 13 senior New Hampshire Scholar athletes, a number of All-State athletes, and countless wins on the field, court, rink, and track. Other valuable clubs at BHS include Best Buddies, which has hosted numerous activities, including a send-off party for Christian Maroney. FBLA took a trip to Canada and attended several business conferences. Student Council put on its annual Winter Carnival, Homecoming, and Spring Fling. There are many more that I have not mentioned, further demonstrating the hard work and dedication of our students. Thank you to our fabulous teachers for supporting us, and thank you to the school board for always trying to work in the best interest of its students.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for everything you've done this year. I'm sure I in time for seeing that numbers as well, so we really appreciate all you've done.
And Kate, you have shown us how important it is to have student representation on the board. So I'm sad that you were going, but I'm so looking forward to seeing your next.
Okay, School Resource Officer report.
Good evening to you guys. I'm Steve Colbert. I'm the School Resource Officer, and so for the last 13 months, wanted to show my face tonight. I've interacted with a handful of you at least at this point. Let you guys see who I am. I submitted a report in writing with some statistics and have any suggestions or ideas, and my contact information is on there as well.
Questions? First, I want to say I'm really glad the rumor wasn't true that you were leaving.
Yeah, I got a quick lesson in how quick a rumor flies around in high school. I made a fan comment as I walked into the career fair about finding my next job. And, about a day and a half later, I had about 6 kids asking me why I was quitting. So that's not true. I'll be here next September. I'll be here for the rest of this year.
So I just had to say that because it was quick. Questions?
My email address is right on there. I'm going to see you email address if you guys have any concerns or questions. I can bring it to.
So I have a question. So I'm looking at the report and I see the different categories, and there's a lot on here. I see a lot of areas have improved since the last time the report was done. But what do you feel are the biggest issues that students are dealing with?
I would say first and foremost is probably the substance misuse. Vapes and marijuana vapes, nicotine vapes. It's a huge issue. And sort of a byproduct of that too is, I think, the mental health aspect. To let you guys know, I don't have any children. My reference for high school was the mid-90s. So to see what high school kind of looks like now, it's the same, but it's different, and I think that's one of the huge differences. That and the technology change, certainly. With the social media, it feels like the school day kind of doesn't end for these kids sometimes, or the social pressures of the school day doesn't end, and that some of the things that are going wrong in the school day are 24 hours, because they're all instantly connected on their phones. There's less separation from some of the issues that they're having here today. And the administrators sort of dealing, and myself dealing with stuff that happens outside of school that then leads into the school. The threats, bullying, that type of stuff on Snapchat, Instagram, and some of those other social media platforms. Those are the two biggest things. Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
How much have you been able to get into the 2 elementary schools?
Not much. That's so you asked the kids' biggest issue. That's my biggest issue. Is sort of it's a physics riddle.
Yeah.
There's one of me. There's 4 schools. There's 2 towns. I'm technically part-time, 6 hours a day.
Right.
Certainly, I spend most of my time at the high school, and then maybe 20% of the week at the middle school. The elementary schools are a little bit more sort of by invitation, walking field trips. I'll try to help out. Reading nights, stuff like that. If I can get there for sort of special events, that sort of stuff. That's sort of the extent of this plan.
Thank you. Understood.
Thank you.
Principal reports. First up is Chuck. Detailed report. Pictures. Any questions? Okay. Mr. Hill, the ES. Questions for Mr. Hill? On the table? Okay, no questions for Mr. Hill? Mr. Poe?
I was asked to present something to the board, if that's okay.
Yes?
The last couple times I've been here, I've been asked several times for this, so I'm happy to come with some maple syrup, so. We're finally, so these are specific tonight. These are not that officially off yet. It's all the official.
high-level synopsis of your board reports for the audience in the streaming?
I'm going to start or with me. Is that
Sure.
over here? So I like to put a lot of pictures.
If you could come up to the microphone, please. Thank you. And if you could state your name and which school you're from, for those listening online.
And actually, if you can spell it, I've got the spelling.
Eric Hope, principal of Belmont Middle School. I like to put pictures because there's a lot of exciting things happening. Particularly the last month in April, we had a very busy month with students going to nature's classroom. So my report includes several pictures from our 5th graders going to nature's classroom. We also use this as an opportunity to connect with our Canterbury folks as one of our transition activities. So it's one of several activities that we do where we can combine 2 schools together where they eventually merge. So it's a nice opportunity. And they get to bunk together, which is a better way to get to know your friends when you're thrown in overnight with each other. So we are state testing, like the girls had mentioned. This week and next week, specifically reading, math, and then science is also part of our 5th and 8th grade requirements for state testing. While our kids were way up at Nature's Classroom, we had a community service day, as we do every year, which is right around Earth Day. I think Earth Day actually fell on the weekend, but we celebrated our community service day on a Friday. So all of our advisories did some work around the campus, and the Nature's Classroom students came back at 2 o'clock, and what was nice is all the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders met around the front of the school and just cheered the Nature's Classroom kids back. So just kind of welcoming them back. As part of that Earth Day community project, we work closely with Belmont County Landscaping and Tanger Outlets, as you can see in the report. This is year 2 of us planting a sugar maple tree up behind our outdoor classroom. So if you're familiar with where the outdoor classroom is, it's in the back of the school, in a section of woods, and then right behind that, we started planting. The goal is over the years planting a sugar maple every year for however many years we can do that and create like a little maple grove. So the students have named the trees number 23, number 24, which corresponds with the school year that the year that they were planted. So 23 last year, 24 this year. So again, that's in combination with Belmont County Landscaping and Tanger Outlets, which is nice. As you can see, some of the pictures in the report show the adults working with the kids and offloading the truck and all that kind of stuff, which was really, really great to see. Really big career fair. We've been doing a career fair for a long time. We've had 15 presenters come on April 19th with a variety of different careers that our 7th and 8th graders, as part of their school counseling units and things like that, get a chance to meet real practitioners throughout the community. So that's a very well received event that we do as well. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hope? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to Mr. Finch, and then we'll swing back around.
No applause.
Well, did you bring anything? No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, that was my syrup. I took it in the parking lot.
I see. I get it.
Matt Finch, principal of Belmont High School. We also have a tremendous amount of great stuff happening at the school. I started with some hiring updates. We're actively looking to hire 2 teachers for next year. Actually, since this report, so obviously very recently, we've gotten some candidates for that, and we're looking forward to meeting them a little bit later this week and seeing if they'd be a good fit for us. We'll have a limited number of support staff openings, at least presently. It's looking like it's going to be pretty limited. So we're, even just since last week when I submitted this report, there's been motion and there's been movement on those pieces. Mrs. Kamiri was good enough to contribute a school counseling update, and you can see that these recent months have been very full, between programming and working with students to work on their future goals. We've got seniors who are about to leave us. Kate, I'll echo everybody on the board and say that we're all going to miss you, and this is my chance to say it publicly, other than graduation, obviously. So yeah, we're prepping for graduation at the end of the school year. We're bringing in additional supports. Melissa Allen brought in a presenter about the internet crimes against children to work with the students. School to career coordinator, you saw a big update about that for the career fair. The whole gym is full every time we do this, between students and business partners. It's really, really terrific. We also have testing going on. We've got science testing next week. We've got AP testing that the school counseling team does most of the coordination for. It's a busy office for a limited number of staff members. The building and facility projects that I alluded to, the gym floor is going to look fantastic. It is going to look absolutely awesome. So we turned a little bit of an unfortunate mishap when the roof leaked into an opportunity, not only to repair that, but also make some big adjustments and some big upgrades to that area. Steve Dalzell, I wanted to throw a quick thank you to him because he and his team worked over April break to go pick up some cafeteria tables and chairs that another school was no longer utilizing because they had purchased new. So they were a bit of a handy-down, but they were certainly a leg up versus what we had in the cafeteria previously, so that was great. Kate alluded to the Robo-Raters, who every single year just do something more and more and more amazing. It's an outstanding program, and I put some pictures in there. Not only did the award that Kate alluded to get presented, but there was also a special little section there about Harmony Rivera, who took it upon herself to create a robot that's based on the kind of the logo of a company that was there as one of the main sponsors. And apparently that created quite a buzz. All kinds of people came over and checked it out, including the owner of the company. Gave her all kinds of swag that was related to that. Kate alluded to the Astronomy Club event, which for a little school and a little astronomy club to be recognized by NASA, multiple years in a row, it's pretty outstanding. We recently on Monday, the 6th, we had the Jake to Wear Kindness Project event at Belmont High School, where we recognized the Jake to Wear Kindness Project. There were some fundraising opportunities. They collected wiffle ball equipment and fishing equipment to distribute to local kids. That was a really, really great game. And one of the really special moments of the day was the recognition that Belmont, who won that game 11-0, Jake to Wear when he played at Belmont High School, wore number 11. So that was a moment felt by everybody there. We had our blood drive put on by the NHS. We got the prom coming up. We had our own contributions to Earth Day. I've got some pictures in about that. The same day that Mr. Pope's kids were going out, we had students on our campus and down the roads picking up. Lots of career fair pictures here as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Finch?
I did want to give a shout out to Mr. Finch, who was the game announcer for that Jake to Wear Kindness. The chicken dogs come out.
Oh, that's great.
A nice show.
Thank you. I'm going to sing next year, Sean. You probably won't be there then.
I had a quick question about Harmony's robot. Did she build it, bring it there, or did she build it on site?
I think she had brought it there.
That's a big.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know the entire process that she put together, but again, it ended up at the end of the Worlds. Apparently, they do a big slideshow, and it's kind of a closing ceremony type of thing. And to make any reference or any appearance in that is a big deal because there's so many teams there, and the competition is so fierce. But that was one of the images that they passed through, and apparently got quite an ovation for that too. Yeah, very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hill.
evening, everyone. I'm Mr. Hill, principal at Belmont Elementary School. I'll just highlight a couple of things that are somewhat new for us or different. This past week, we had Teacher Appreciation Week, and we tried a new game show of sorts, Survivor game show. So each day the teachers had a chance to spin the wheel for prizes. They also got a challenge when they spun the wheel and had a chance to earn points and become the ultimate survivor at the end of the week. So it's a little bit different, a little bit of fun for the teachers in addition to some other things that we typically do. We also had a great event on this past week, our family night. And so it's a combination of an art show, the book fair, and vocal ensemble performing. And it was just very powerful and uplifting for me. We had so many people in the building. The hallways were alive, they were packed. Some new things going on. Again, got a little room in the art room that was really cool. Kids all created artwork that was placed in the, I guess it's like a neon paint in the art room. So it was set up like a glow room, and kids could go in there. The little brothers and sisters were also able to paint on a paper that was set up in the middle of the art room that was created that night by all the participants. So that was super cool, and I'm thankful. You know, one of the great things about working at Belmont Elementary School is the way the community supports us. So many parents come out for these events and support their students and the staff, and so that meant a lot to me as the principal. I'm certainly proud of all the work that our students and staff do. I also know that Katie Benkira, our teacher, displayed, I believe, at least 4 pieces of artwork from each student in the building. We have 330 students or something like that, so she did a lot of work to prep and had staff helping her. I also learned recently that we have 2 teachers moving out of the area, unfortunately, so we're going to have to do some late hiring, which will be somewhat difficult, but we're on it, moving quickly, and so we hope to get a couple candidates in those positions soon. We had just had a spring drama production. The title was Think Good Thoughts, which aligned with our school theme this year, Choose Kind, so that was nice. They did a great job with the performance, as always. Our Girls on the Run program will be participating in the New Hampshire Girls on the Run 5K on June 1st. It's in Concord at Memorial Field. That's again a high energy event. It's very empowering for the girls. Our Tigers on a Hike program begins on May 22nd. They'll have their first hike. And we have our spring concert coming up next Thursday as well. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Chubb.
Hi everybody, Erin Chubb, principal of Canterbury Elementary. We have a theme here tonight with the different principals, with all the different events going on, so I will add to that as well. We had our one-room school kickoff in April to help the students get an understanding of life in the 1940s. And this was ahead of the visits they will take, the walking trips down to the one-room schoolhouse at the end of May. That is always a really special event. We have volunteers, folks who live in town, or retired teachers who come in and help run stations and activities for the kids. They get to try on clothes from the era, or try playing with toys from that time period, just to help them get a sense of what life was like. A really nice highlight from that day was a visit from the Granite Tall Swing Band. They ended the whole experience with a performance, and the students loved it. They had such a great time, and at the end they invited us all to come and dance. One of the stations was learning some dances from that time period, so that was a really special time. Earlier, someone spoke about the Monster Concert. That is such a powerful experience for Canterbury band members to be a part of. They absolutely love coming up and being part of that experience with the middle and high school students, and I think it kind of invigorates their excitement for what's to come and what maybe they will be able to do when they get a little bit older. So that is always a special experience for them. Our school set and reached a goal to raise at least $3,000 for the American Heart Association, and that was
something that we were able to manage this year, even with a smaller enrollment than in previous years. And we celebrated with heart-healthy activities. K-2 had a dance party, and 3rd to 5th grade participated in the ever so popular staff versus students scooter hockey game. There are a lot of exciting moments in those games, and the students and the staff really get into it with each other. So it was really nice to be part of that. Our OT and I served as referees, and we even had real jerseys that we borrowed. Our school counselor's husband and her son, they ref for hockey games, so we got to use their jerseys, so it was pretty special. The other thing that we brought to CES this year, for the first time in many, many years, was an artist in residence. This is something that's been a priority for a couple of years in bringing someone to our school. And it was a really fantastic opportunity for our kids. So we had Jeff Irwin come from Trash Can Lid Productions, and he was fantastic. He worked with the students in a workshop style process over the course of a school week. Every group got to meet with him at least twice. Our older students met with him more than our younger students, but all students K-5 got to be involved. And then we had a big concert to culminate the learning that they did. And it was really, really fantastic to see how engaged and excited the students were. And they had a lot of fun with it and got to be creative and support each other. And they were definitely sad when it ended. Like the other schools, we also did some things to support our community for Earth Day. We did some cleanup efforts on the school grounds and also in the town center in Canterbury. Everything from picking up trash to gardening to raking to sprucing up the cemetery in town. And it was really nice because we had some folks come in and join us and take part. Everyone from a retired support staff member to a town select board member to members of our local church, just jumping in and taking part in the activities with the kids. In addition to all these different activities and events, we are also in the process of doing our spring assessments. Right now, our students are in the middle of their state assessment process, and they will wrap up next week with 5th grade taking part in the science assessment. We are also hiring at this time. We do have a new secretary and a new speech assistant. We're really excited that they're on board with us, and we are in the process of hiring for teaching positions for next year. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, board member reports.
I do a lot of track meets. Kids get involved. That's probably what the big thing is.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
development. It was part of the CIP, and it was the amount that we had earmarked to come out of the Expendable Trust.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Next up is driver's ed contract.
So we are currently with, have a contract with Mark's Driving School. This will be renewing it for 1 year. And he's proposing that it's $800 a year for driver's ed. The real purpose of this driver's ed contract is twofold. It provides space for the driver's ed program to be held, and our Belmont students get priority for registering for driver's ed.
Motion to approve the contract with Mark's Driving School for 1 year.
Second.
Discussion?
But the 1 year is his request.
1 year is our request.
Not possibly the longer terms.
We did longer terms when we were contracting with Dale, but I spoke with Matt and we would like to do a 1 year contract. So just a few things to work on.
Have we ever had anyone else ask to?
No, and most schools aren't even contracting with driver's ed now, they're just telling people to go find your own. It's very hard to find places that will provide driver's ed.
Other questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Okay, information, Mr. Jersey, Superintendent.
Thank you. Put in your packet a piece of the communication we've been working on to potentially send out to the school community. I wanted to provide the board with a draft of what that communication looks like. You can see that there are some questions at the beginning, defining what is competency-based education, definitions of competency, standards, and proficiency scales. Why are we a competency-based school system? And then I really wanted to point out the history of how we started competency-based teaching, learning, and grading, and reporting in our district. It goes back to 2014. Actually, prior to that, there were already some initial conversations and communications around shifting to competency-based teaching and learning in our district. This just started in 2014. That's not to say that we weren't moving in that direction prior to that. But we really want to highlight, because I know that there were some concerns about potentially lack of communication throughout this whole process. And when I went back and looked at the communication that has been provided for the years from 2014 specifically up to 2019, it was significant. Anywhere from newsletters to emails to open houses to parent forums. It happens every year that this communication is going out, all the way up to 2019. And I just want to point out that the current policy that we're discussing, policy IKA, was approved by a school board in 2015. I was hired in 2016 specifically to come in and implement a new policy that was approved in 2015. And that policy was passed that had the 4-point grading scale in it. And it didn't go into, according to policy, it wasn't to be implemented until 2019. So it gave us 4 years to implement this grading scale. And I also want to point out that in 2019 is when we went to a full district-wide grading and reporting on a 4-point scale. Shortly after that, the spring of 2020, we bumped out for COVID for basically 2.5 years, where the focus was only on protocols and safety
We were debating masking all the way into 22-23, which was last year. This year, 23-24, is actually the first year that we've had the opportunity to be able to focus on our practice and have some really in-depth, engaging conversations with our staff around our current grading practices, and more importantly about what competency-based teaching and learning has for a positive effect on our students. So I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of this timeline. Included in this timeline, there's some links in there, our current policy, the strategic direction. Also in 2019, there's a link there where BHS hosted a college admissions panel. There's a whole hour-long video there where college admission counselors are discussing and answering questions on the impacts of 4.0 scale on admissions. So we did go through that process. It's linked here. And also, we put in there the action plan that was presented to the board out of one of my school board reports back in September when I put this report together. Those action items that are in that, you can see where the updates are with the steps taken. Also some links along the way. There are a couple pieces here that we're still going to pull together. If you scroll down to the bottom of that action plan, we did put in a list of colleges and universities that our students are attending. You can see it's a fairly significant list. Adding info for scholarship research. I know that's a concern that's been coming up. We have really no data on what scholarships our students are receiving when they're applying to schools, because that would be asking individual students what financial aid packages they're receiving. It's not something that we do or we track, so we don't really have data there. We only have data on local scholarships, and those that we receive. We would ask for college admissions and scholarships in general. We don't have that data because we're not asking that of students, because it is their financial aid packages or personal information. And then we want to add in basically transcript information, which would be the school profile. And you can see that we ended that with the impact on military applications. 5% of our 23 graduating class went into the armed forces. So working on this to put out to the community so that they understand. There's some questions here that have answers, but more importantly, the timeline that we've gone through as a district to get to where we are, as well as the action steps that we've taken, particularly since June of 23, where all the focus this year has been looking at policy IKA and really trying to hone some of our skills and addressing some of the concerns that were addressed early on in the year. So that's what we're working on at this point. You can see that we also linked in prior school board discussions, internal policy committee discussions, and upcoming meetings. So we're really working on trying to figure out the best way to get this out to the community where it will be read and that information be easily accessible for people if they're interested. So if there were any questions on that.
Is the communication going out via mail or email or?
We haven't really decided on the best means in order to do that. Website, email, social media. That's what we need to determine the best way to get this out there.
You're working on it. Yes, so first of all, thank you for taking the time to pull all this together for me and to listen to my feedback and change formatting and all that fun stuff. So as we kind of talked about this, like I would love to see this on our website. I would love to see each of the individual school websites pointing to it. I would love to see communications going out from like a joint statement from Michael and you, Michelle, or even the whole entire board, and Michael saying that we recognize that, you know, there's concerns, we're addressing it, like here's where we're at, so that people can see that. And then I think that we should hit this from every angle we can. Have discussions about it, plug it wherever possible, and just keep pointing people at this, because the information here is really good. So, and I'm just gonna cite out the grading consistency issue, because I know that not everyone here can see this, but we identified 3 different steps to work on that. So there's action items being done. So there's different pieces that get into categories of concerns that we received. And I think it is very important to be transparent and to let the community kind of in on it. So what this does is this essentially takes the conversations we've been having for the past year on what's being done, this wraps it into one big hub.
I think that this is really great information. It's also a substantial amount of information. Has there been any discussion about potentially having meetings with the public so that they can ask questions once this does go public?
And it's not something we haven't taken it any further than this right now. What I'm thinking, my initial thought is that we want to be able to get it in the hands so it's a quick info. We have not seen a lot of participation when we're inviting people for forums and so forth. So I think, and I personally enjoy getting in front of people and answering questions. It's a matter of how many people are going to come. Because when we also have, open houses or invite the community in to have a conversation on competency-based education in our district, very few people attend. So right now the focus is to get it in front of people where they can easily access the information. And I really would like to figure out a way that we can actually see the number of people that are reading this information, so we get a better understanding as to when we put things out, how many people are actually accessing the information that we're taking time to develop and put out to the community, and really get a better understanding of what is the what's the venue that they really want to see this information, where they're going to take it and read it.
Does our website have the capability to track views?
I believe so.
So one of the things that I was thinking of is kind of like expandable sections, because it is a lot when you're there, but you have the timeline, you can make it expand, make it collapse. You can look at the action plan, expand, collapse. It goes into the, what is competency-based education, what is a competency standard proficiency scale, why are we doing this? But the ability for people to go to the content they want and get it.
Who does our website? Like not posting things on the website, but like drop downs and things.
Kim Hingley. She's our website administrator.
Right, but does she know how to change the format of pages?
She has done that. This might be new to her, but anything you put in front of Kim, she's going to figure it out. She's very good at what she does when it comes to this and everything else.
Would it be possible then, if we're not going to maybe talk about a community opportunity to discuss, would it be possible to set up something where it would be easier for our communities to ask questions when they have them?
Yes, we definitely want to figure out a way that people can provide input.
Thank you. I mean, we talked about this, I'll just say, if we wanted to try to host something, we as a board could do that, but we would need to assist and take a lead in it. So I'm just putting it out there. So I understand what you're saying, Michael, but I'm just saying if we as a board choose to do something, we could.
I like that. So one of the things we're looking at is, what other information do we need here? I provided a list of what I wanted to see, but did I miss something? Really looking for the board's input. So that we can move forward with this.
So when we moved to this model, I think there was discussion about requirements from the state. If those are still in place, I feel like we should have some other information. But I also think if that's a state sentence required, they are.
So we could link the ED 306 administrative rules into this, which are riddled with competency-based education as a requirement in many areas. So it is a requirement for minimum school approval to have competencies and move in the direction of competency-based education. So that's, the thoughts of not doing that is not an option. We are required by the state to be doing what we're doing, and in my opinion, we're well above what other districts have implemented up to this point. We're doing very well in our implementation path. I know there are concerns with part of any path that you go down that's new. There are going to be concerns that need to be addressed, and we'll continue to do that.
Other thoughts?
So are we supposed to be reviewing as a board IDA tonight, or are we not there yet? Or what? I guess I'm.
So I know it's kind of odd. Number 8 is an update and discussion around the policy IDA. You're asking what else to go in this communication.
Correct. What else do we want to see? So we laid out the draft of it, consolidated the information. What else does the board want?
Just as a philosophical question, I'm kind of curious, is in asking for all this information again, I mean, it's been asked multiple times over, assuming somewhere in the area of 10 years or so. There's been a lot of people and groups of parents that have responded, and from my understanding, responding well with decent experiences and information. And it seems to me that as though we keep asking for the same information in hopes that we're getting the answers that we want.
So I think I'm a little confused on the question because this is distributed information. This is responding to questions. So we haven't consolidated all the information.
Okay.
So no one asked us to do this, but based on the people that were attending and the conversations that were happening, like it was very clear that maybe the work that's being done here and is being done through the past year isn't being relayed, which is why I requested to put this together. Because there's a lot of things going on to address the concerns that we've received that clearly people are not privy to here.
Gotcha. That being said, the list is quite comprehensive.
So this is information, so do you need something from us to move forward? What do you need, Randy and Michael?
Just any feedback of any other items that you feel that need to be added to this. Communication, we try to encompass, the original action plan was put together based on the list of concerns that we received, as well as the concerns that the board articulated to all of us. So that action plan was put together specifically based on all of the concerns that we heard, not only from the board, but from our staff and students along the way. So all of these, we felt like we hit the majority of the items that we were talking about when it comes to concerns. We just want to know if there's anything else that we feel that we need to put in here as to where we are with addressing some of those concerns.
I guess the only other thing I would add is, I think I hear from people, I definitely hear from people, concerns about the grading problem. There's multiple layers to that comment. There's a comment about empower, there's a piece about competency-based grading. There's a number of different layers to that comment. I don't know where we're putting those different sections.
in here on tooling.
What's that?
There's a section in here on tooling because we received complaints about Empower. So the first thing that was done is the district mailed home usernames and passwords to the family, gave them access to that, but then they started reviewing ALMA to go towards a more user-friendly.
So really the concern around Empower is taken off the table because we are moving to ALMA for our grading and reporting. So that decision's been made and we just have to start working on a transition timeline in order to move to ALMA for grading and reporting.
I think that's the hard part. I have to see how it's laid out. There's just a lot of information here. So from a user perspective, like I know from reading this from tooling, the districts will be moving to ALMA for grading and reporting. But unless someone goes to an action plan, are we gonna have a bucket that says concerns with Empower? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you drill down to what you wanna get to?
That's what we need to work on.
Right.
Really making it as user-friendly as possible so people can just click on the information that is most of interest to them. This is all of it in one document. We just really need to nail it down so that we can simplify it to a point where it's user-friendly.
I'm concerned that 5% that we say that we'll look at that box on the right side of page
Right.
4.
Steps taken. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Steps taken.
The toys one section.
Oh, right.
Fourth column. Second or fourth column. Just, like you said, it's just a lot of information for having the kids do what they want.
Figure it out.
Do we have anyone who specializes in like communication? Okay. I didn't think, but I just thought I'd ask.
It's a work in progress.
If the board wants to put money at it, I'm sure we can get someone.
Right. People have additional questions, any comments? Do we have what looking to us?
So yeah, obviously we need to figure out how to make this digestible. There's a couple of pieces of information that we still need to figure out how to relay it in here. And then the joint statement. The joint statement. So we'll have to work with you on that.
Fantastic. Summer programs.
Happy to say that the summer program is right around the corner. So at BMS and BHS, June 24th through July 3rd is when we do our standards recovery. We always coordinate between the two schools, particularly for transportation purposes. BMS and CES, July 8th through July 26th, that's summer school. And district-wide, our ESY is July 8th through July 26th. BES also runs their Title I program from July 8th to July 26th. So basically when school's out, we start summer programming and it runs all the way through the end of July.
Questions about summer programs? Do you have enough staffing?
Yes, we do at this point, other than CES, where just as we started, I believe it was last year, we've invited CES families and students to attend either the middle school or BES for their program.
Anything else? Okay, next up is on the horizon. a business admin report that day, so.
It's not a lengthy agenda, that's for sure.
Very important. So we can look at when it gets closer what really is happening, what we need to do. Anything else?
So, last day of school,
Last day of school is June 18th, it's an early release day.
so I guess what I'm asking is the promotion ceremonies and graduation. Is that the week of?
We have promotion ceremonies the week prior, as well as that week leading up to the 18th.
No board meetings. Those are.
No, none of them are on Tuesday evening.
Anything else? Okay. Volunteer list.
Make a motion to approve the volunteer list, noting conditions.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, motion carries. Enrollment report.
You can see in the enrollment report that our district total as the first of this month is 1,101 students. And I'm also happy to point out this is the first enrollment report that we received over the past few months, where our enrollment has gone up by 3 students. We celebrate the small things around here.
Any questions about enrollment report? Okay, next up, internal policy. So Mark and Alice, jump in. You'll see in your board packet, the policy committee meeting minutes were included for your review. We felt like as an internal policy committee that we wanted to bring this to the board in terms of looking for directions. We've been very clear that it's not our job at internal policy to go back to something different. We were looking at IKA. And so now you have all of the same information that we have. Are looking for some direction, thoughts.
My stance when we were first given this was that there wasn't enough of a difference between what existed and what was being presented to make it a worthwhile change. Based on what seems to be what everybody's looking for is a larger differentiation between grades. Just it didn't exist. So, and with what you're talking about, Michelle, I mean, this is quite the hot topic, for 3 of us, to be making a decision versus all of us. So, I agree. It was very appropriate to bring to at least one board for review. Get input, back to policy, or decide what we're doing.
So I'm normally not one to jump on the bandwagon,
I
but
just can't hear you if you're not speaking in the microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you.
so I started looking into this because when I originally brought up my concerns with policy IKA, one of the big things was I felt like this is not a one-size-fits-all thing, and I think that's part of the problem. Is we tried to take one policy and put it across all schools, and they're all different. And how some kids grade at the elementary is going to be different than the middle school and the high school. So I did some searching, and I looked at other schools in the area, and what they've done is they make it pretty generic, and then they move it to the student handbooks. So here's one from Comval. It says, the superintendent and building principals will develop a grading system appropriate for the grade levels of the respective schools. The grading system will be approved by the board and published in the parent-student handbook. All grading
decisions shall be made at the building level, and that decision shall be final. And I kind of liked this, because even, you know, when Kate was talking about hers and her update, and as we talk about different things, this is not, one solution is not going to fit everyone. And I do think that we need to look at it more at the school level. The handbooks are something that we review and approve every year. So, you know, we don't look at IKA every year. You know, once it goes, we either make changes or come up, but we're looking at these every year. We read those handbooks every year. It's something that's constantly in front of us. And so, like I said, I rarely decide to go with a group on this, but it appears that most schools are handling it this way, and I think that that might be a way to go on this.
And while that is true, I think the School Boards Association is like that as well. So I'm fine with things being really spelled out in the handbook. I don't think this policy doesn't address all of the concerns. The other concerns will be addressed in the handbooks. My concern actually is that we can't just get a handbook the night, you know, to one meeting in August and expect us to approve it.
So I would, if we go down this road, I would ask that individual sections be made and provided to us well in advance of when it's done to reduce, since this is such a significant change. I don't know if that's unrealistic, but if we want to break it down to take it and then break it, I don't know if policy would be the one to split it up, but to me, it just seems like we're trying to do a one-size-fits-all, and that's a big struggle. And I see it in the notes when they're like, you know, this isn't going to work for the elementary school.
Right.
This isn't going to work for the middle school.
I don't care either way, but we still not answer the question actually here too, which is, what are we doing in the middle of these schools? I mean, I get your point, and I actually would say, if we get to a point where we actually have a policy, whatever you want to call it, that works with the school, you know, these people want to start reporting, it's not going to change every year, so when we're approving the handbooks every year, possible it's not exactly the same with 100 teachers. It's got to be really practices. So I guess I don't care either way how we do it. So one reason I feel like get to that.
I also did a similar thing to Randy. I was looking at the IKAs of a lot of the schools in our area, and I found a similar thing. Some of them, it was like one line where it was like refer to the specific building. So some of the schools don't have like a general outline. So that sort of made me think about, I came to the internal policy, and what I heard from it was basically the elementary school felt very comfortable in the new draft policy. They felt like that 1 through 3 scale would work very well, at least from the perspective of the teachers that were there, and those are teachers that I know and trust. So I was thinking that perhaps that would be something that would work for our district, is that they've done a lot of work to get to there, and we don't necessarily want to scrap that just because it doesn't work for the high school. So I think that's something to consider, is we may need to split up this more than we originally thought. So it may work for the elementary schools to use 1 through 3, but then maybe the high school is 1 through 100. That's 2 totally different systems, but it's possible to do that, and that may be a path that we would want to look at.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Kate was saying. The middle school has been working on a 4-point scale since 2014, so if there's any changes that this board is looking to do around a grading scale in general, I would want the board to focus specifically on the high school. Not that I'm advocating for that at all, because I feel that the high school's really been working diligently, particularly on trying to bring around the concerns around consistency, and really having conversations around their proficiency scales based on depth of knowledge. I think they're getting more detailed than they've ever been. past. I think that the handbook is the proper place to put this information. As for getting it in the board's hands, any transition, particularly if you're looking for a change, isn't going to happen over this summer. So it's going to take some time in order to do that. I mean, this policy alone, we've been discussing for a year, and transitioning to the 4-point scale, we were given 4 years to make that transition. So I don't anticipate major changes, even in a handbook, if there is a change that this board is going to make on the grading scale in general, because it takes time in order to make those changes, if there are changes in play. This draft policy we've already been working off of for professional development around these scales that are here, and then be easily put into a handbook. I think that just as we talked, and I've mentioned this multiple times, I think we need to look at grading expectations at the high school level specifically, which would go into a handbook. However, I feel that we would be able to put a handbook in front of you in a timely manner if we are able to keep this 4-point scale where it is, and we continue to refine our practices based on the 4-point scale.
So, Randy, I completely respect the how you dig into things and look at what other schools are doing. My caution is that just because other people are doing it doesn't mean that it's good, and that can be applied, into various different levels. I have 2 issues. One, I guess, is more towards competencies, and I'm going to use Algebra 1, because everybody seems to know what Algebra 1 is and what it's all about. We had this exact same concern when I was helping the town of Pittsburgh into competencies way back in 2007. When I realized that every single district was going to be able to create all of their own competencies for something as universal as Algebra 1, I held up the big red flag saying, this is a problem, this is caution, because there should be an extreme amount of caution, because a student from Pittsburgh who's taking Algebra 1 should be able to move to Nashua and take Algebra 1 and have very similar course expectations. And when every single district is able to create all of their own competencies, that consistency goes away. And you can apply that to many of the core content classes, and some of it doesn't apply to. When you get into the music and the art and some of the different electives, it's not near as important as the core content. When we get into the actual grading of things, the differentiation. I mean, I would be open to keeping a 1, 2, 3, 4 if we section it out to 4 or 3.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, but then we're back to a 10-point, basically a 10-point scale anyway. So at that point, why not use what is, I don't want to use the word common, but what has been used historically. I don't see enough changes in the IKA. I believe as a board, some decisions need to be made, and it needs to get kicked back to policy.
Why would it be so hard to go back to the 100-point scale? Why would it take so much time? Say the high school did that. Why would it take so long?
Because you're talking about completely changing the grading practices again. We don't have proficiency scales that are based on a 100-point scale. We have to completely revamp transcripts, which is a colossal effort in order to do that. It's not something that happen right away. And what we're talking about, if you go back to a 100-point scale, quite honestly, in my opinion, it's easier because it's easy to grade them based on a calculation, where what we're asking teachers to do now is more difficult because they're really having to look at the details behind what it is to provide a 4, a 3, and so forth. So you're talking about completely changing a grading practice that we've had in place for years at this point, and that takes time. As I said earlier, Jeff, just this one policy alone was a year, and it took us 4 years to implement changing to a new grading system. It's the same thing if we're going to go back to a 100-point scale. And that, again, you know where I stand on this.
I know where you stand. I know, so
it's very difficult. I know
why it takes so much to go back to a 100-point scale.
yeah, it's significant change because it's moving a system and systems don't move that quickly.
I guess my frustration is that I understand it takes time, but in the meantime, we have students that are going through it. As a parent, as a board member, I want my students to be successful and understand what they're doing during the school year. So while I'm trying to be patient, I also recognize that she has 4 years in that school and then 4 years. And she's a hard worker, and she can't always tell me how to obtain the highest grade or what happened. So while I'm waiting for the change, I feel like as a parent, I'm waiting. And my child might miss that opportunity to get to the ride.
And that's a similar feeling that parents had when we were transitioning to a 4-point scale, is that, you know, there were times when we were having to convert from a 100-point scale to a 4-point scale. We had multiple transcripts, multiple report cards that were going out. So there were families that were part of that transition. That would be the exact same process of going back to a 100-point scale. You would have families in transition. And it's, again, knowing how systems change, can't happen right away because it takes a lot of work on our professional staff in order to make that change happen. Significant, and there's a significant logistics behind it. I know that I'm sure Paulie can speak to it around from the school counseling department, around transcripts and reporting and so forth. What does that look like, and how does that impact our current students? Because, you know, if you make an abrupt change, what does that look like for our current students? How does that transition, I should say, how do you actually take a 4-point scale, convert it to a 100-point scale without impacting the students' grades overall, particularly those that are going to be applying for colleges next year, when that's all that they have seen and that's all that their transcripts have read as a 4-point scale. So you have to look at, from a student perspective, how would that transition impact them in the immediate future, particularly our seniors next year.
But at the same time, it's always going to impact some senior at some point. It's going to impact the student. So I just don't get it. Like, 100-point scale, it's the way of the world, it's percentages. And like most kids strive to like, hey, she wants a perfect score. Why don't we do the 100-point scale in high school so they can get the perfect score, so they have something to drive for? Even the students who are lower, you know, they're trying hard, but they can't achieve high grades. They see that they're making progress. Because I mean, she could be working her tail off, and then I still only get a 3. So I mean, there's no reward for these kids. And I think that's what frustrates me. They don't have a sense of achievement. I mean, they obviously achieve a lot, but grading-wise, they don't feel that achievement. Like, I can never get to that point between consistency or I just don't get it. Like, 100-point scale is very easy. Everybody knew what they stood. Parents knew how to read it. I know we're trying to go the modern way of education, but I think that's doing us a disservice. Other countries aren't doing this nonsense, and they're ahead of us in the world. Let's move forward.
So one of the things that I'm struggling with is when we initially started having these conversations, and the night that you had brought this to the board about going back, is we as a board decided to take 2 paths. And one was to look at what it would take to fix the current system, and the other was to use the strategic direction to get the input to see if we wanted to go back. And when we cut the strategic direction from the budget, and Michael presented his findings in his assessment, he asked us if we wanted him to continue down the path of fixing this, and we directed him yes.
And that decision was made when I was sick, and not present in meetings. And it being kind of the point person for bringing this issue back to the table, I was a little frustrated by that decision that the board made.
And I understand that, and I recognize that, but the board directed him as a whole. No one said, no, don't do this. So the discussion tonight is about policy IKA and where it currently stands. It's not about going back to the 100-point. I think that is a completely separate conversation. That's where I'm struggling with.
So that's where I address, I'm okay with the 1, 2, 3, 4. If we differentiate, I don't know if that's the right word, if we split it up into, 2, 1, 2, 2, 3, if we have 10 different steps within that between the 2 and 3, between the 3 and 4, I'm okay with that.
A couple things. So one thing I want to say, what I'm struggling with is that I've been defending the school board policy for a year now. This is a board policy that I feel like I'm on the hot seat defending. That's what I'm struggling with. A policy that was put into place the year prior to me being hired, where I was specifically hired to implement this policy. And that's what I'm struggling with, is that I'm defending a school board policy to a school board. Second is the fact that going to Alma, it naturally calculates a standard score in the sense where you're going to see a 3.3, a 3.2 as an overall score for a standard and an overall score at the middle and the high school for a course or content area. So you don't need to have all of these increments within the 4-point scale. The calculation alone based on a standard and the overall score is going to show you specifically where Kate stands compared to Michael stands on that standard on more than just a whole number. So,
but on a summative assignment, you need to be able to achieve something other than either a 3, a 3.5, or 4. That's what I'm talking about is on the grading is you may achieve a 3.1 or you may achieve a 3.7 or 2.4. That's where I think it gets important.
Again, the difficult piece with that, Mark, is that how do you define a 3.2? How do you define a 3.35? How do you define that? That's a calculation. That's not defining what that score is. Our current grade, your draft policy that you have in front of you has more detail than we've ever seen on a 4-point scale, defining what those numbers actually are. So that mathematical calculation it's not defining the learning, nor does a 3.2 assessment define the learning. Because how are you going to define something that's different between a 3 and a 4 if it's a 3.3? It doesn't define the learning, and that's what we've been trying to do with our proficiency scales and our current grading policy in place, is it defines the learning. A numerical value, back to the 100-point scale, doesn't define the learning, it just says that you've calculated this number. But what we've been working towards for years is defining the learning and focusing on the learning. That's why we put grading and reporting as the last part of our transition plan of implementing this. Grading and reporting is the last aspect. It's the least important when it comes to students learning. And you can see all through this information the success that our students are seeing when they leave our system. So we don't have any evidence that what we currently are doing is having a negative impact on students getting into schools. We don't have the evidence on whether it's impacting scholarships. I'm sure there is. We don't have it. The bottom line is that breaking it down by more increments isn't going to define the learning any better than what we currently have, and it's just a mathematical calculation.
So for me, I would like to see some of the grading, I don't know what you call them, grading expectations, but that's where we have seen inconsistencies and heard about inconsistencies, particularly at the high school, related to the highest grade you can get is a 3, you can't get a 4, there's inconsistency in how you reach the 4. So I see the policy as a foundation, and I think that we have to make a decision on whether we stay competency-based grading 1 to 4, or we go 100-point. And I agree, this is about the 4-point system here today. I don't want to leave, I think it's a cop-out to leave it up in the air to just say the schools will make a decision related to the actual grading scale.
when I suggested that, it's because I feel like it needs to be based on the schools and the students because they're all different.
I agree with that. I just wanted to mention, you talked a little bit about the difficulties transitioning between the 100 and the 4, and I just want to say, like, for the students, if we are going to be experiencing that, we already have experience with that. A lot of our students already have to translate their grades from what the 100-point scale to the 4-point scale, and it's not great. I've taken a number of BLAX classes, so has my sister and a lot of my friends, and we're pretty, I would say, somewhat unhappy with the way that translation currently happens, because it is just a formula that your grade gets plugged into to translate, and we feel that it doesn't actually reflect our work, because you're taking like a 98, which is a pretty high score. Like, I would say that's probably a 4 if you looked at sort of the definition of a 4, but because it just gets plugged into a formula, it ends up being 3 point something, and that's not really an accurate reflection of the work. So I would say, whatever the process ends up being, that's really important to keep in mind, is that transition process has a big impact on students if we're looking at it from that perspective.
Things. One, getting back to the one size fits all, the draft policy, that's for elementary schools as well, correct?
It's broken up into 2. There's grades K to 4 and then 5 to 12.
So, I guess my question is, at the elementary schools, we're not using a 1 IE to a 3 currently, correct? We're using C's and A's.
No, they're using.
No, we're 4-point across the board.
So are there any changes to the elementary school in the draft?
Yes, the elementary schools are currently 1 through 4, so this would alter it to be a 1 through 3.
I guess one I have is, why would we change K to 4? We haven't heard it.
So we actually did hear from some of the elementary school teams in the 2 conversations that we did have, and the general consensus was that with learners this young, that it going beyond proficient is extremely difficult. So they have a hard enough time getting these children to proficiency, and going beyond that at some of these younger grade levels is just, it would be exceptionally difficult. So that was the general thought.
We did ask the question. All 3 of us asked the same questions. All of the teachers.
I also believe we discussed this when we were talking about initial concerns, because some elementary parents had expressed concern to board members that 4s were not awarded.
The path to a 4 was not being offered.
I guess the other thing I just want to mention is, I just wanted to kind of respond to Michael's comment, which is a good comment, about defending the school board policy to the board. And I would say, you're right, but I would say the administrators, the superintendent, and the board have some responsibility to say, yeah, you have to defend it, but mainly because it's not working. And I think that's the biggest issue. We all share that responsibility. And that's why I feel like you have to defend it, because it's not currently working. And it's not your fault, not just the administrator's fault. It's also the board's fault, it's all of our fault. So, I understand what you're saying, but I think the reason why you have to defend it is it's just not good. There's a lot of confusion. It confuses anybody in our kids in the schools. my issue with it from the start, and I was going to kind of go along with it and see how it works, but I'm concerned about, I don't know a nice way to say this, but there's a wide range of assessment scores can get. So if I get a 3, somebody else has trouble and they retake, and they may have an option to get the same score that I got when I first did. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. And so I feel like having more variation than that 4-point scale can potentially correct that situation. I don't know how. That's always been my concern from the get-go. Is if Mark takes a test once and does better than me, he deserves a better score. I don't think that's happening.
So let me just make sure I'm hearing this right. So the concern is, we pick on Mark. Mark takes a test, he does great. When you take the test, you don't do great. So you're provided the opportunity to retake the test.
Competency.
And then you get a better score than Mark did.
No, I would just potentially, we both have.
Okay. I don't think that's a grading issue here. That's more like a recovery type thing, right? Because isn't that what you provide the opportunity?
Yeah, it comes to grading. Actually, it reaches grading.
Well, I would argue, why is one test determined grade?
I'm just saying.
No, I know, but you should look at the dominance of all the things Mark has done to show competence in all of these. But I know what.
I just wish the proficiency scales had more variation.
Michelle, I'll use the example. I'll use the example when I was teaching technology education. I had a safety exam that students needed to pass with proficiency in excess of 90, depending on the test. You know, sometimes the lowest you could get would be a 92, but they had to exceed a 90. If you didn't get a 90, you had to retake it. In 2 days or 3 days time. As a potential employer, do you want to hire the kid or the potential employee that passes something like that on the first time, or the 5th or 10th or 12th time? Are they still both of them proficient? Do they both eventually get there? Yes. But that doesn't account for how trainable you are, how you're learning, content or material or training. And Sean's right. You have to be able to account for that stuff in some way, shape, or form.
Well, so what I was saying though is that there's not just one test. So there's other ways you could demonstrate competency. That's what I was saying. I wasn't saying. I'm just saying one test is multiple choice or whatever. There's other ways that a student can show competence. Yes.
Kate has something to say.
I would disagree with that, and I would say school is about learning. We're not going into jobs right now, so the whole point of our school is to learn. Competency-based education is about getting to proficiency, so I would say that doesn't apply to this conversation, because the whole point is to get you there, and if it takes you a longer process, that's okay. That's what school is for. And I don't think that a student who just takes a little bit longer to get something or doesn't get it the first time, but they really nail it the second time, they should not be punished for that extra step.
Jeff, you want something?
No.
Oh. Sorry.
I did, Michelle.
Oh, you did.
So again, to piggyback on what Kate was saying, she kept saying I or you. It's the individual student, and all throughout the strategic direction that was developed in 2000.
career where you get a maximum 2. I see it all the time as the parent of a middle school child. So it's how this is being taught with the competencies is different from a middle school and high school because they're different students. So that's my 2 cents. We're going to keep these in there. It needs to be broken down.
Other comments? Sean, are you saying you want us to consider?
Sure. I'm not trying to punish anybody. What I'm trying to do is not put everybody in the same. I don't want everybody getting increased their position. I want some students reaching higher. And there's much of a gap between just being proficient and being high achievers. That's my concern. I want everybody to have a chance to take a test 20 times to reach proficiency. I know people that have to be proud of it. But the kid that takes the test the first time and aces it should have a higher grade. Or over the course of a semester should have significantly higher grades. Now, I don't know if this does that. I'm a little more old school than that. All for competition, I want kids to strive the highest amount possible. If they're just striving for competency, I'm not going to find
Maybe you, like Kate was talking about ELACs. We need to work on that. Why is it she's not getting, 98 on a ELACs, but it doesn't come back, she's a 3 or 3.2. We need to work on that. It's failing them.
So I'm sort of wondering, I remember on the 16th, or April 16th, that Silas had actually presented us with that Alma presentation that kind of outlined things, that had sort of outlined things a little bit better for each grade, for each course. I wonder if kind of incorporating some of that might be, not course-wise, but grade level-wise, it might make it a little bit easier to digest in this way, or in the way that people want it to be presented to them. I don't know how we would do that, but seeing that at that meeting, it did make things a little bit easier for me to understand. So that might be something that we can kind of look at.
Something that might help with figuring out the more or less variation is if you take a look at the seniors, I don't know how they do it, but like the difference between like the top 10 or the whole class, like how big of a margin it is between our and GPAs. I don't know if those are large or small gaps. I feel like they're pretty small, but then that might help a little bit understand how our grading system currently affects that, so you can kind of see what the variation looks like, because I don't think that there's a lot of, the same, but I think there are some that are very similar. There's not much of a distinction, so that might play into that.
I don't have enough information.
Well, I don't feel like we do, because you're gonna send it to us, and just so you're aware of what's gonna happen, we can make changes or try to, but then it's coming straight back to you guys, potentially.
Right now, the only 2 pieces of direction that the policy committee has is look at trying to get more steps and broken down by the individual schools. I don't know if we would be able to craft something that would be acceptable to the remainder of this board without some additional direction.
I gave my feedback in my public comment, which has 2 pieces that you can also take into account. Those are very specific, and those are also mostly for the high school.
Anyone want to join policy? I just want to be clear, we are functioning under IKA, the current IKA. So as we do this, we can work through, we can talk with Michael about our options, because I'm not an educator by trade, so I don't know that I graph too much. But ultimately, it's gonna come back here. And right now, we stay what we have.
I just have another question. I don't know if this is for policy or not, but have we looked and like talked to other schools that do this type of grading to find out what their struggles are, if they're experiencing the same thing, like how they're, I know the policies are keeping it pretty broad at the policy level, but there's other high schools in the state that do this.
So, recent story on that. So I went to an Innovations and Learning Conference, day conference a couple weeks ago. And Interlake School District was there presenting on their grading system and their use of Alma. I was pleased to see that we actually are ahead of the curve when it comes to that. And they're not necessarily grading on a 4-point scale, they're grading on it's basically a descriptor, exceeding expectations and so forth, so here. Again, it's all over the place. To your point, Mark, we were given this free range back in the day to develop our own systems. So if you compare to other school systems, they're going to be all over the place. But I did recently, I was pleased to meet with a candidate for one of our teaching positions at the middle school, and I asked him specifically, I was offering her her first teaching job. And I asked her, so what's your familiarity with a 4-point scale? She said, that's all I know. This is going to be an easy transition. This is coming from Keene, somebody that student taught in Keene Middle School, somebody that experienced the 4-point scale all through their college experience. This is not new to people. This isn't new to our candidates that are coming in. So I know one of the concerns for our new staff members coming in, or our teacher prep programs, understand the 4-point scale. I had one sitting right there in front of me and said, if you were doing something different, I wouldn't know what that is. So this is more common than people realize. And say that you are seeing more school districts, I don't have evidence on this. This is anecdotal, just based on conversations. More and more districts moving in the direction that we've been moving for years. I'm very pleased to see some of the things, have these conversations, and see where we are right now. Bottom line, you're going to get a variable when it comes to a
motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next up, CBI, Superintendent Evaluation and Goal Setting.
Make a motion to approve policy CPI.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next up, EFDA, collection of money for food services.
Motion to approve the proposed changes to policy EFDA, collections of money for food services as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We'll acknowledge the resignations that are in our packet. And then there are 3 nominations: BES Title I teacher, BMS 7th grade English teacher, and CES grade 2 teacher that we can do in public unless we have questions of a personnel nature related to any candidate.
Motion to accept the nomination for the BES Title I teacher, BMS 7th grade English teacher, and CES grade 2 teacher.
Second.
Is 21 candidates? That's good, right? Is that one of the good around?
I don't necessarily know if it's more, but it's a solid number.
Any additional questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next up, public communication and correspondence. If anyone would like to speak, come on. Just need your name and spelling of your last name and what town you're from.
Amanda Liakis, Liakas, from Belmont. Sure. My opinion and what I'm hearing as you guys are speaking about the competency grading. I've been observing and obviously participating as a parent to this system for a couple of years and hearing the complaints for years from students and also from teachers and other parents. So to me, it does seem like it is not working. So I appreciate, Sean, you saying that. It doesn't seem to be benefiting the student body, and I think that's probably why we're all here. I think that's why there's a school board and faculty in general. I understand for elementary school, it was competency-based before. Everything was competency-based, whether it was satisfactory or above. Middle school is a little tricky. My daughter comes home and tells me that there is no option to get a 4, and sometimes there's no option to get a 3. So that's frustrating as a parent. She's not at the stage where she's really super aware of that. I think some students are losing drive or losing motivation because if it's not an option to get a certain grade, they're just getting, it's like bare minimum, and that's good enough for them. So I kind of see that with my middle schooler, and that's problematic. If you try something new and it doesn't end up working, that is not anybody's fault, but you don't keep it because it's too much work to change it back. I've been hearing about the problems with it for years. Maybe if something had been started years ago, we'd have a resolution by now. Average kids are struggling. Above average students can't reach their standards or their goals, and they're frustrated. My high schooler is taking in addition to her high school class, some VLAX classes, as well as some community college classes that are both using the 100-point scale and doing exceptionally well. Her attitude has changed with those classes, her drive, her choices to go above and beyond, and in her college history class, she got a 100. If that's not going to translate into a 4 for her college transcript, make that make sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I just think, how long are we going to kick the can? Maybe starting to actually take action, because yes, these high schoolers, these seniors, my daughter's a junior, but a lot of us have kids in the other schools, so I'm pretty sure this is going to continue to be an issue. So it needs a resolution. And that was all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Am I allowed to speak again?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I was allowed to speak again. Holly Canary from Canterbury. I absolutely understand the frustration of the kids and the parents, because it's not clear. Right now, it's not clear. But you have to keep in mind, what is the goal? Look at where the kids from Belmont High School have gone to college. Look at where they're being accepted. Ask your kids, is there anywhere that you have applied that you have not deserved to get into that you haven't gotten into? Okay, those questions, the grading system works, and I get what you're saying about you shouldn't change it just because it's hard to change. I can appreciate that comment. The state has dictated that you move to competency-based education, okay? This is the best way to grade competency-based education, because it's about the skills and it's not necessarily about incremental numbers, because you can, if you're on a 100-point scale system, you can have somebody that is super proficient in 90% of that class, but they tank other parts of that class and then they're passing, okay? And the whole idea of competency-based education is that everybody knows all the skills and is proficient in all of the skills. So my question to everybody in the room is, why is that number so important? We have had no issues with colleges, and I will debate that with anybody over the last 4 years. Our kids are getting into the colleges that they are applying to. The colleges understand our school profile, they understand our grading system, and when they have a question, they call and we explain it, and they're happy as happy can be. They are happy with our students because they are learning the material. They are prepared to go to college. Yes, there needs to be more clarity and there needs to be more consistency. I agree 100%. As a parent, my youngest daughter was a senior when this transition happened. I went to a meeting on, an open house meeting that the school provided or Michael provided or somebody. I was one of 3 parents there. 3. Okay, so it is not that this information has not gone out. It has absolutely gone out. It is very difficult to get people to come to meetings. I'm really happy to see this many people here tonight. Consistency absolutely has to be across the board. When you're talking about the route to a 4, those discussions are happening that a standard should be able to reach a 4, you should be able to reach a 4. Absolutely, I agree with that. The whole issue with VLAX and that kind of thing, if a kid gets 100 in VLAX, they're gonna get a 4. And same with the college, and the community colleges do use a 4.0 system, and if you have a 4.0 as a number grade from a college, you're gonna have a 4.0 for us. So I can verify that for sure. But lots of places are doing away with rank altogether. I mean, it's really a conversation about, and I appreciate what you're saying about the kids' motivation, right? The kids are motivated by those grades, and I get that, and they're motivated by that competition, Sean, I get that. And I think that we can include those kinds of things as well. But I think that for competency-based education, this 4.0 grading system is better for grading the skills and the things that are supposed to be happening in competency-based grading education. And there's a difference between, there's a how score in there, there's a habits of work score that is reflective of, so yes, if a student, achieves at a certain grade point level, the how score reflects their habits of work, okay? It's all in there, it just needs some tweaking and some